Hello, team. Welcome to another ATP geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan at MS Pierce. This is the Ukraine War live chat with German aid to Ukraine, who has come to share his knowledge with us and opinions. In a very interesting day it is, with the European elections taking place over the last few days, and obviously aid to Ukraine being fairly consistently given by Germany over recent times. So lots to talk about. Sorry, this is so last minute to my audience. I basically, because of the European elections, it completely slipped my mind that I organised this yesterday, and I was like, oh my goodness, so it's a bit later than it should be. Anyway, whatever. Thanks for coming on, German aid.
Yeah, hello everyone. Hello, Johnson. I'm glad to be back. I believe the last time we spoke together was in February, right?
Wow, goodness me, time flies.
Yeah, time flies. 4 months. So yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Well, we'll start with the politics, because I think that's more pertinent to today, and then we'll go to a military aid, and we'll look at your new website, because the website's changed a little bit since we last looked at it. So okay, there's been this surge of the far right in certain places, particularly in Europe, and when I say certain places, I mean France, very much so, Belgium, Spain a little bit, Germany as well. Other places we have seen, Denmark has held off that surge and has actually got an increase in the left. Other places, the centre seems to have held out. Donald Tusk seems to have done fairly well in Poland. We've had the opposition leader in Hungary do a really good job of reducing Fidesz, the Viktor Orban's party, by 10% and getting 30% of the vote himself. So that's exceptionally good. And other places, it's a real mixed bag. We've got Giorgia Meloni on the right, would have been far right, but I think she's now kind of adopting a kind of moderate pro-Ukraine right that seems to be doing very well in Italy, and she is gaining a lot of kudos for that, and might be an important person in the European Union for being a kingmaker. Anyway, all that's going on. Sorry to give all this context. And then, so going back to Germany, but Germany's been this big concern, and France, because these are the two big EU nations that provide an awful lot of funding to the EU and are basically the integral members of the EU project, of the EU itself. What's your take on what has happened in Germany from a German point of view?
From a German point of view, I would say that the current election shows one thing, that the civilians here in Germany are, in my opinion, penalizing the current government, the traffic light coalition, the Ampelkoalition, so the SPD, the Greens, and the FDP. At least it seems that way. Every of these parties lost, and especially the Greens lost big. The CDU, the old Merkel party, of course, gained a lot of traction. And then we will, of course, also see the far right and far left parties, the BSW and the AfD, which are both pro-Russian, also gained a lot. And especially regarding the AfD, I mean, second strongest party in Germany. That tells you a lot, right?
Yeah, so just to give the audience a bit more context there, so there's a traffic light coalition of basically the centre left. So you've got the Greens, the SPD, like the socialist left. They are in charge of the country at the moment. You've got Merkel's old party, the CDU, and the CSU, the Christian Democratic Union, and the Christian Socialist. CSU anyway, those two centre-right German parties who were traditionally, Angela Merkel traditionally had controlled things for a long time. They have done fairly well, but at the two extremes, you've got the AfD that did very well. They did quite well, but not as well as people were expecting. But you also had the far left, which is this woman politician called, let me just bring that up.
Sarah Wagenknecht.
Yeah, Sarah Wagenknecht, who was originally in Der Linke, then started up her own party, BSW, who are pro-Russian. So you've got two extremes of pro-Russian that have done really well. And where AfD didn't do quite as well, now correct me if I'm wrong here, where AfD didn't do quite as well as was expected. So they were expected to get over 20%, and they got somewhere around 14 to 15%.
Yeah, I believe the last time I saw was 15 and a 9. 15.9%.
Really? Oh, okay. So it's gone up a bit. Okay, fair enough. So it's still doing quite well. They've got an increased number of seats, but did some of their vote, because of the controversies, go to other kind of independent people who might end up being just aligned with the AfD anyway?
I'm very sorry. You might want to explain that a little bit more.
Yeah,
for me.
I didn't know whether some of those votes went to other smaller parties, not just the BSW, because the BSW is the other end of the political spectrum to the
Yeah.
AfD, but whether they went to other parties that were because of all the controversies and the scandals that hit AfD recently, whether some of those voters had left AfD but voted for other people who were quite similar to the AfD.
I actually don't think. There's,
okay.
as far as I remember, there's one other party, Volt.
Yeah.
Which also gained a lot of votes. I believe it was like 3% or something like this.
Yeah.
Might be wrong on that. But apart from that, yes, of course, people expected the AfD to do better. But I think the current result is worse enough, to be honest. And
Yeah.
there was an election, and I'm sure that other countries do that also, that they ask the voters after they voted, like, why
The
did you
exit
vote for
polls.
this?
Yeah.
Yes. And regarding the AfD, 80.2% of the AfD voters said that they don't care if it's a far-right extremism party as long as they speak about the right topics. Right. And I think that explains a lot. And that also answers to your question. No, they really don't care. Most of them really don't care. There can be any scandals. They can be funded by Russia directly, and it can be proven. It doesn't matter to most of the people. And very shocking to me.
Interesting. So what would those topics then be? So like, we don't care about the scandals, we just care about the politics. So is it all about immigration? Are these people, so the interesting map to look at is that it seems to follow the East-West Germany split. So on the right here you have blue representing, I think, blue representing AfD, and it goes along with the border of East Germany. So is this also a case of the AfD being understood to be somewhat in support of Russia and part of that, or is it because there's just more nationalism over that side?
I think we clearly see that the old Eastern Germany, or that Germany in particular, is still divided in a lot of cases, and we do see this in every election, not just the
Right.
European elections.
Okay.
We saw that in during the last elections of the German government. When we vote in a federal state, we always see that the eastern part of Germany is always very either on the left side or on the right side, and most of the times pro-Russian. That was always the case. Just want to highlight that the votes are still changing. I, for example, see my city on the map, and it's marked blue with the AfD. I know for a fact that the last time they published results, it was actually CDU. So just want to point out, it might not look that bad as it is on this image, but
Right.
yeah, you still see a lot of divided, that both parts of the country are still divided. And I think we will see this, or this is due to the hottest topics. Let's say that, I mean, when we look at the 2019 election, it was one of the highest topics was climate change, climate policy, stuff like this. So parties which actually spoke a lot about this topic, like the Greens, for example, in Germany, gained a lot of traction. Now, the most important topics are Russia, Ukraine, immigration, and of course, parties like the AfD or the left, which are talking a lot about these topics. Also, of course, the CDU, they gain a lot of traction to that.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to find the right. I did have some earlier on, some good bar charts of. I'll go and search them out, but I think this is the most recent. Is it?
That's only
Possibly
in
not.
yeah, that's in Brandenburg.
Okay, I'll go and find the right ones. But so essentially, what we've seen is again, this march of the extremes. So you've got the far left and the far right, both pro-Russian, chipping away at the center ground. Olaf Scholz has come out and said we won't follow France's, decision to hold a snap election. You've got your elections in autumn. How's that being taken? And would it? I know it's a long way away and a lot can happen, but could this be a real challenge going forward to Germany's support for Ukraine?
First of all, I sent you in the private chat, I sent you an image. Maybe that's the one you're looking for.
Yeah, nice one.
And regarding the question, I think, Jesus, that's a hard one. It at least shows the difference between Scholz and Macron, right? Like Macron immediately said that he's going for re-elections. The Prime Minister of Belgium resigned, if I recall correctly. And then we go with Scholz, and he was asked for a statement after the election, and he just said nope. And that was the first official reaction of our chancellor was to say nope. And I think that says a lot. To be honest, expected. I didn't expect Scholz to say, hey, I'm resigning, or that I call for re-elections. But I do think it shows a lot, or says a lot about the current government, especially the SPD, of course, when it has, as far as we see right now, no personal consequences, because something like this should have personal consequences.
So you think, like in the very short term, there will be no effect on international policy, on support for Ukraine that might take place later after the autumn elections if there's a big national shift. But for the time being, things are looking all right. Is that about right?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's just this was the one I was looking for originally, because it had the previous votes and how much they've lost out, etc., etc. But you sent me this one, which gives you the CDU doing pretty well, the CSU as well, same sort of place, the Greens and the SPD presently in. With the FPD in coalition, and then AFD overtaking. So you've got the far right overtaking the centre left there, at least that party, which is really significant. And then BSW, which is the far left, also doing well. So it is certainly a challenge. Is there anything else that you think is worthy of note in the German elections at all?
Not right now. I think, in my opinion, it comes down to what the FDP is doing in the next days and weeks, because they were the most government critical people within the government, and there were a lot of talks about they actually crashing the government, saying we don't want to govern anymore, along with the SPD and the Greens, stuff like this. I think it comes down to what they say, but when it just comes down to the SPD, I think the pro-Scholz movement, or the people behind Scholz, are still very, very strong, and the people who are actually want to change something, like Pistorius, for example, are in the minority. So
yeah, we'll come on to Boris Pistorius. He's an interesting one. Just this from Mud Wizard commenting: Eastern Germany is economically weaker. Inflation hurt there more than in the western part of Germany. Also, they have fewer immigrants and are more against them. It's really interesting because in the Brexit vote in 2016 in the UK, the places that were most anti-immigrants were the places that had the least immigrants, and actually were the places that voted more for Brexit, for leave, which is very interesting. So actually, the places that have least immigrant integration in Germany might be the places that were most for AfD. Any thoughts on that at all? Yeah.
No, it's basically the same. I guess that goes for most countries in the world.
Yeah.
Goes also for us in Germany, and yeah.
So Boris Pistorius is your foreign minister, and your defense minister,
yes.
And he has been particularly strong. There have been some rumors going around that he was going to resign, that it's over the idea that Germany isn't doing enough, or Taurus isn't being allowed, or this and that. All these rumors are circulating, and it didn't happen. What's your opinion of Boris Pistorius? Is he a future leader? And where does he stand with regard to the next a few months before an election? Is he safe in his? Do you think he'll stay, etc., etc.?
First of all, I never heard of these rumors before you mentioned them right now.
Oh, right.
So yeah. So they're probably not very funded.
Yeah.
That would actually very surprise me because he's doing a hell of a job.
Yeah.
I mean, he's in office since I believe it was January 2023. So 1.5 years now, and since then he's Germany's most famous politician. Every time somebody asks him about it, he's saying, "Yeah, that's just for the time being. This will go away." And now we're like 1.5 years later. He's still the most famous one. I don't think he will resign. That would be a very stupid move of him. And yeah, bringing him out of office to actually cancel him or something would also be a very stupid move, because he's a gem. He is really a diamond for not only for the Bundeswehr, for our own army, but for Ukraine and for our country as a whole. In my opinion, that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
And,
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's well known that he wants to do a lot of more for Ukraine than many others wants to do. And you have to imagine he's in the SPD, so the party who actually within the government does the least for Ukraine. They still do a lot. I mean, we have to imagine Germany's Scholz always says this. Germany is the second strongest supporter of Ukraine in the world, and the SPD is the strongest party within the government. So nothing goes without them. They have to accept everything. So after the elections, I actually don't see the SPD winning again, or the Ampel coalition winning again when Scholz would attempt to be a chancellor again. I think it would be a different story when Pistorius would actually go for chancellor. But a lot of people, including me, really think that he's more important as the Minister of Defense right now. And I would be very scared if we get a new Minister of Defense and he's being the Chancellor. He would be a great Chancellor, in my opinion. But yeah.
It's really interesting that he's garnered that much respect and kudos for doing what he's doing. Is he an open supporter of Taurus going to Ukraine?
Well, we know that. I mean, he can't. You have to imagine he's in the same party as Scholz, right?
Yeah.
So the guys within the same party, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are, let's say, quiet about the topic,
Right.
because they don't want to say different things than their leader Scholz is saying. But it's well known that Pistorius, for example, just a few weeks after he became Minister of Defense, went on German television, for example, and says, "Hey, it's totally fine for Ukraine to strike on Russian soil. That's like, they have the right to do this." And the same goes for specific things that he says, that Ukraine needs the capabilities to strike on very far distances, long-range strike capabilities. And this, of course, also includes Taurus. He doesn't mention Taurus, but the things he's saying suggest, and I'm very much doubt that he's against the delivery of Taurus. He can just not say we're delivering that because it's Scholz's decision.
Yeah, because I often defend people like, Biden is a good example. So I often defend Biden for X and Y not being given to Ukraine, because I say, look, Biden is not a military expert. Like, he's not going to get into government and then say, "Oh, by the way, we definitely don't want to give 300-kilometer ATACMs to Ukraine." Like, he's not even going to know what a 300-kilometer ATACM is. So when it comes to things like that, and all these different stages along the journey of the war, it's unlikely it's a figurehead that's going to do that. It's more likely going to be the Security Council in his administration, people like Jake Sullivan, that will have more granular detail. It's going to come from the Department of Defense, I think, from the defense experts themselves who are going to know this say, actually, we don't strategically have enough of these kind of weapons at the moment until they're going to be replaced, and X, Y, and Z, and all those arguments that then boils down to Biden saying no, or the administration saying no, and then people blaming Biden. But I think it's actually other things going on. But with the Taurus, I get a sense that the opposite might be the case, which is actually that because all of the arguments that Scholz has given have ended up being proven wrong. Like the stuff is saying, like, we can't send them because you'll need German expertise on the ground, and we can't send them because of this. And then people have come out, like the company that makes them has come out and said, yes, you can. And so all of his arguments seem to be proven false. So it appears that it is Scholz being anti-escalation or being cautious and wanting the US to send cruise missiles first before he does. Is that how you would read it? Is that fair?
I mean, first of all, I want to remind you and everyone here that from the first day, I said the only reason Scholz is not agreeing to send Taurus to Ukraine or allowing to deliver Taurus to Ukraine is because he fears escalation. And you see this in my opinion, I follow a lot of discussions of Scholz and also other government leaders and public talks of them, and when they have discussion rounds, stuff like this. And it feels like on every talk he has, every debate he has, every discussion he has, there's always one thing he makes very, very sure to say loudly, and that's that we are not escalating the war. We are not becoming a direct participant of the war. And he will make sure that it's not going to happen. And so it's fear. It's fear what is driving him. And this is not going to change, in my opinion, to be honest. And all of the prior reasons, like you need German soldiers on the ground, it's just
excuses.
It's excuses. We have to be honest about that, because the excuses, they change every time. Every time someone actually proves that it's not true what he's saying, he gets another argument why he can't deliver Taurus.
Yeah.
And we have to be honest about that. It's just fear.
Yeah, and what's frustrating, I know you've been frustrated about this. You get frustrated because when you announce something about Taurus, like, people have a go at you as if you're like the decision maker. It's like, hey, guys, I'm don't shoot the messenger. But the whole Taurus thing is also something of a distraction. It would be super useful for Ukraine to get them. Of course it would. And you could start dreaming about, say, the Kerch Bridge getting taken out, etc., etc. But actually, Germany's the problem is it distracts away from all the great stuff that Germany is doing, and we get absolutely blinded by the Taurus debate, so that we don't recognise the just incredible amount of stuff that Germany consistently is doing. Is that fair?
Absolutely, I think that's a good summary of the situation. Just want to highlight, of course, the cruise missile Taurus would be very, very much needed for Ukraine. And I want to highlight that, of course, nobody is wrong about that when they're saying Ukraine needs Taurus. Of course, you're absolutely right. But the one thing we have to acknowledge by now is the situation around Taurus won't change as long as Scholz is in office. So leave the topic for now and get it on in 2025 if there's a new government or something happens to Scholz and whatever, right? And you're absolutely right. It's just people are focusing on Taurus and on nothing else, and people don't see what we are actually. I mean, a lot of people still do. I just want to also point that out, that I get a lot of messages, or I see it in the feed, that people are saying, hey, it's another Patriot system, or it's another aid delivery, and stuff like this, right? They see this, but at the end of the day, we're always coming back to Taurus, and it's just annoying.
And actually, do you know what? Those Patriot systems are more useful than the Taurus. Like, in my opinion, like, without the German Patriot systems that are now 3 systems, possibly 4, and we can talk. That's probably our next port of call to talk about. But with the news coming out from the Clemente, the air defense officer, who she was talking over the last couple of days about how the German Patriot system, because it's on the back of these big trucks, those big German trucks, is movable in a way that the American provided system isn't, and they're using them as sandbushes, so that they are being able to take out these aircraft. And now they've admitted, I don't know if she's correct, but the claim was the A-50 big a radar plane that was one of the two that was shot down by the German Patriot system. So that like the usefulness of the Patriot is it annoyingly eclipsed by the conversation about the Taurus, because the Patriot systems have been like absolutely crucial for Ukraine's survival.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to highlight, I would a little bit disagree with that Patriots are, what did you say, at least as important as Taurus, or more important as Taurus.
Yeah.
I would say, you know, when you have a couple of Taurus and you actually destroy the launch sites of cruise missiles, you don't need as much Patriots to defend themselves. It's always plus and a minus in my opinion. Both things
but I
right.
wonder whether the Taurus cruise missile is the correct thing to send against an airbase, though. I know, you know, that's where you want a cluster munition to just drop lots of bomblets over. And so the frustration is that America hasn't allowed ATACMS cluster munitions at 300 kilometers to be used on air bases. That would be the perfect thing.
Yeah, of course. The ATACMS with the cluster munition inside of it would, of course, be better. Just want to highlight they are different. Of course, I'm no expert, but they are different. Let's call them mission modules. So you can use the Taurus in many different ways, also against airfields. There's not only the buster bunking capability, you can also use them against other targets. And for every target, you could use Storm Shadow or Scud BG. Taurus can do the same or even better. So just want to highlight that. But I do agree, the Patriots are very, very much needed. And I think what she says is absolutely correct. I mean, she's the one with insight in this. I think, I mean, we already knew that the German provided Patriot batteries were used for these ambushes. We knew since July last year that they used, for example, to strike on or inside Russia in the Bryansk Oblast to shoot down 2 Russian fighter jets and 3 Russian helicopters within a couple of minutes. A couple of days later, they struck again in southern Ukraine, actually destroying another Russian jet. So we knew that the German provided Patriot batteries were used for these ambushes moving along the front line. And it's just another confirmation of this. But I do think, and you might know better about this, the A-15 50, I believe it was claimed as either a friendly fire or an S-200, right?
So there were 2 that were shot down. One was more over is it either Rostov or Krasnodar region, or over the other side of the Sea of Azov. I think one was more over Donetsk area. But so there were claims that an S-200 took it out, and the Russians claimed, because it's always interesting to see what the Russians do. They prefer, I was talking about this in my earlier video, they prefer that to have the embarrassment of shooting their own aircraft down than saying that the Ukrainians have a superior technology or a superior bit of kit and or skill. So they'd rather say, we shot that down, than the Ukrainians used a German provided Patriot, because it's kind of giving the Ukrainians the technological advantage. So that's what they went with. That it's friendly fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree. It's always funny to see the Russians saying their own incompetence is better than acknowledging that Ukraine actually also does some things very good, you know?
Yeah.
And it's the other way around also. I mean, we all should acknowledge that Russia also does some things good or learns from different things. And
absolutely. So where are we with Patriot then? So German. Okay. Well, before you answer that, remind us what the IAAD is.
Yeah, so the IAAD initiative, or the Immediate Action Air Defense Initiative, was launched by our Foreign Minister and our Defense Minister, Annalena Baerbock and Boris Pistorius. And the goal is to very fast strengthen the Ukrainian air defense. Not about doing something in the long term, it's doing something in the short term. And they've launched this initiative and spoke to different nations in all over the world, in North America and South America, in Europe, in Asia, in like everywhere. And different countries already contributed to the German initiative. You can basically see this probably most of the people will know what the SEC ammunition initiative is, right? Regarding the artillery ammunition. The German one is basically the same, just for air defense. And we got a lot of contributions by now. I don't know if you want me to mention all of them right now, or if you want to speak it later.
Yeah, so go for those contributions. See if I've got one of your summaries here. But yeah, go for the contributions.
Yeah, so we have two different kinds of contributions. We have first countries who are providing equipment, and we have then on a tweet a little bit more down, you have also the equipment contributions.
Yeah.
On a little bit, you were already a little bit more on the top.
All right.
Up there. This one. A very interesting. No, one below.
Oh, okay.
No, not above, below.
Yeah. I'll find it.
Yeah, the one with Makeyev, with the Patriot image. So we have two different kinds of contributions. We have first the equipment contribution and the financial contributions. We have countries who are providing equipment. These are Germany with the Patriot battery. We have Lithuania, which pledged to contribute 6 Ember 1800 air surveillance radars. And then we have Belgium, France, Great Britain, Romania, Spain, and the US, who are pledging different kinds of missiles, I guess. It's not known yet what they are. This one. Yes, exactly. And I guess my personal opinion is with regarding to Spain, the few Patriot missiles, I believe it was 12 in total or something like this. This will be Spain's contribution, in my opinion. But nothing known about these yet. And then we have financial contributions.
It would be really interesting to know how many missiles are fired every month and how much each missile costs. And, because you think, 12 missiles is not a lot, but it depends.
That's for one weekend.
Yeah.
That's for one longer weekend. I mean, we saw once in July 2023, we once saw an image of a German Patriot component, and there were the hit marks on it. And so guessing by that, if nothing had changed yet, it's for like Friday to Sunday, and then the Spanish missiles are exhausted. Yeah, and of course, regarding the financial contributions, we have Belgium, Norway, Denmark, the Netherlands, and Canada. And just to add for Norway, I found this out a couple of days later. Norway's contribution is 176 million euros, so the second highest within the financial contributions. And regarding Denmark and Canada, we already knew for which the funds were used for. Canada's funds, the around 52 million, were used to buy IRIS-T SL missiles or IRIS-T missiles. We don't know for sure. So these are the missiles for the IRIS-T, SLM, and SLS systems.
Just to let people know that SLM is a medium-range launcher and SLS is a short-range launcher.
Yes.
And so therefore, depending on what you're shooting and what range you want to take it out as to what missiles and launchers you'll need.
Correct. And we already also know that Denmark said that their funds, around 134 million euros, will be used to co-finance a Patriot battery. So
we had initially Germany saying, okay, we've already provided 2 batteries. So the battery is a number of launchers, command and control, radar, all these sort of bits and pieces, a significant amount of stuff that costs a lot of money, and you've got a waiting list to build this sort of stuff. We can have a whole other conversation about why the hell the orders haven't been put in for Ukraine bloody 2 years ago. But anyway, so Germany saying we can provide another one, and then there wasn't really anyone else forthcoming from the IAD initiative, or the initiative that was going to provide another Patriot. Romania were rumored, then they weren't. Now they are rumored again to perhaps be considering sending one of theirs. And then there's this new rumor that Germany might be providing a 4th one, which is insane.
Yeah.
Right.
No, absolutely fine. Just regarding Romania, they always said, or the Prime Minister, I guess, was it, who always said that they were willing to hand something over, but just if they're getting a replacement from other countries. There's one solution to this, in my opinion, and I talked a lot, or I talked in detail about this on my Twitter account. But it wouldn't make much sense if Romania hands over a system or a battery, and then let's say Spain goes on and says, okay, now you're getting then Spain can give it directly to Ukraine. You know what I mean? So there's just one solution. Otherwise, I don't see very much. And the solution is to use the funds from the German AAD initiative. And I mean, this is why the initiative was made for, right? In particular, to get Ukraine another Patriot batteries, because these are the most urgent air defense systems.
Yeah, particularly the PAC-3 variant that can fire at or can take down ballistic missiles. Some of your maybe even the hypersonic Kinzhals, but also some of your Iskanders and other ballistic missiles, surface-to-air missiles that are used from the S-300s, things like that. Yes. So and yeah, getting different countries together to buy different components of a whole battery is a really good option to get around the problem. If you don't want to sell a whole battery or get rid of a whole battery, then hey, here's a launcher, and we can still operate our battery fairly much as we were, but we'll just have to wait to buy another launcher ourselves, or this component, that component. Maybe you can cobble together entire battery.
Yes, and that's the initiative by the Dutch right now.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting because I know that I talked with Colby and John from Tochny, for example. I talked about this specifically. I talked on Tochny about like half a year ago or something. If it's possible to just get, let's say, the radar from Spain and a couple of launchers together from Germany, the Netherlands, and the US, and get the logistical support vehicles from other countries, and then you just assemble one battery. And there we already knew it's possible. And the question I have now is like, why do we have to wait for that? As long as I'm not a military expert, and this is an idea I came on like half a year ago.
Yeah, you and me both actually, because I talked about that on my channel as well.
Yeah,
and I'm no military expert. And then suddenly, funnily enough, sorry to interrupt, but one of my ideas was to have F-16 stationed in NATO countries around Europe, around Ukraine, and not stationed in Ukraine. So you can, when you want to use them, you can use them from there and maybe drop down at your air bases to get refueled and then go on your mission. And lo and behold, that's what they've just announced, that they're going to do that with some of the F-16s are going to be stationed around to where they get maintenance before they're used. I'm like, yeah, someone's listening to my videos. Clearly not.
Yeah, they're looking at your updates.
But yeah, no. So the Germans have done a sterling effort again, not just in providing aid, but spearheading this coalition of countries to provide the most important aspects of aid that Ukraine have been shouting out for the whole war, which is air defenses. I am seeing at the moment that the Ukrainians are having a really, really good success at intercepting Shahed type drones. So they've got almost 100%, or on many days at the moment they're having 100%, 90%, that upper range of interception. Is that down to just getting more and more things like Gepards? We hear the Cheetahs are now coming from Jordan, which are these Gepard, these self-propelled anti-air guns. The Cheetahs are the Dutch upgraded ones with better radar. Are they just getting more and more going on here, or what's going on with better interception rates?
Well, I think that comes, of course, also due to other partners supplying more air defense systems and more missiles
Radars
to Ukraine. I mean, just one example, a couple of weeks ago, some German politicians from the budget committee were in Ukraine, right? And they visited an IRIS-T SLM battery, and they said that the launcher, that one of the launchers they visited had just one single missile attached to it. And now you have to imagine how bad the situation regarding how much ammunition they actually have for their air defense systems. And when there's now a drone incoming, they're probably saying, do we really want to shoot down this one single drone, or let it strike and then shoot down a cruise missile? maybe that's a horror scenario I'm picturing myself, but I think it always also comes down not to providing more air defense systems, but have a continuing flow of ammunition for these air defense systems. And regarding the Gepards and the cheetahs, of course, we had the confirmation now that they appeared in Ukraine, which is very, very good. Sadly, or maybe good, that we don't know how many of these are in Ukraine right now. At least for Germany, I can say that we haven't made a delivery public yet, because we're financing 15 of these up to 60. So might be US provided, might be German provided. We will see probably tomorrow or in 2 days if these were German provided ones or not. But yeah, it comes down to that. And then also these mobile fire units, you probably mentioned them a lot during your military aid segments. I believe I saw an article like a month or 2 months ago saying that 40% of these Shahid drones, stuff like this, were shot down due to these mobile units with the pickup trucks and then just an M2 Browning or something mounted on it and then just going full Rambo mode. And I think also, I mean, it's not very complicated to produce things like this, to train people on this. And I think as more systems they got for this, they also, of course, increase the interception rate of Shahid drones.
Yeah, and it's going to be about radars as well. So each of these Gepards has a 25-kilometer radar on top, and you can, I presume, you can link these into, say, Link 16 or your existing systems, network systems. So the more of this stuff you get, and other pieces of radar kit. So you had listed as well, and I know they're building these, so they don't necessarily have these, you know, in stock, but Lithuania to provide 6 more Amber 1800s, which are these large ones that you see below. I know you've got them down here somewhere. I know you're here somewhere. Anyway, they're having another bunch of those on the way. It's probably above. So, you know, they are getting consistently improved radar coverage of their own country, which is going to enable them to have better interception rates, even though they might still be struggling with some of the missiles, particularly with the ballistic ones, because they just need the ability to take out ballistic missiles. So that's a different kettle of fish to having mobile gun units and whatnot.
Yeah, and they also get, you probably talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but they also get new radars from Germany.
Right. Okay. So do you know the types of radar?
Yeah, the TRML-4D, the radar systems of the IRIS-T SLM, and they had a separate order of them. I believe it was 6 again, which were financed by the German government. And
is that through Hensoldt?
Yes, exactly. Hensoldt is building them, and all of them will be delivered in 2024, if I recall correctly.
Which is really good news. So that's an important part of the interception ability to intercept, is acquiring the target in the first place. You can't just sit in the field. I mean, you can just sit in the field and wait for one to fly over your head, but it's not the most efficient way of defending your airspace. It's knowing what's coming and then, you know, moving towards that, etc., etc. So that's all looking really good. Look, we've got your website here, which has been sort of redone. Do you want to speak through like how this all works, what you do for everyone's benefit?
Well, yeah. Just for information, the people who already knew this type of website, my personal blog, where I write in detail articles about German aid to Ukraine. The only big difference is that I got a brand identity now, as you also see from my logo. And I can talk about that, why I'm doing this with a brand identity if you want to.
Yeah, go for it.
I want to make specific changes to my presentation online. First with the brand identity, because I'm applying, or I want to get an official press ID. Currently working on that, because it feels like my capability to report properly on different things, especially regarding military aid, is on the peak right now, and very limited. And the only way I can actually increase it is to, you know, get an official press ID to be able to speak to people, to be able to get all kinds of information I'm not able to get right now, at least officially, so I can use them. So this will be the first one. I'm still programming on my database, which is basically a German military aid list. And that's the one from the government right now. I had one up on online for about a year, currently redoing the whole design, new functionality.
Yeah, because that was really that I liked how that worked, and the you could click on the different things. So obviously that's not what this is at the moment.
No, that's the official government website, and I'm currently still reprogramming, redesigning my website with a lot more capabilities and functionalities within and I think maybe who knows, end of June, July, something like this, I will publish it.
Excellent stuff. And so, other than the IAAD at the moment, what else is Germany, really helping out with?
Well, everything, I would say. I mean, the big difference is when you see is really helping out with. I would say we have a continuous flow of military aid, right? Every week we're providing new military aid, and about 2 times a month we made it public. Then you have different countries which are also providing Ukraine with military aid, but they don't make it public anytime. And I believe France, for example, did once publish it now for the last 4 months. And it's very hard to compare like what Germany is doing in comparison to other countries. I know that it's of course more than other countries. I mean, nobody can tell me, no blame to Lithuania, for example, because they're doing great. But nobody can tell me that Lithuania is doing more for Ukraine in terms of military aid than Germany. But it's very hard to compare Germany to other countries because they are not as transparent as we are.
Yeah, fair enough. Just sorry, I've just got a message about Mirage 5s from someone saying that, and this is nothing to do with Germany, but France is providing Mirage 5s. And I was talking in my previous video about how Zelensky had a trip to Qatar on the way to Normandy, and the Qatar are trying to sell 12 Mirages. So there are only 6 coming from France, and it's the Mirage 9 that Qatar have, which the export variants, I think, can fire Scalp, EG, and Storm Shadow cruise missiles. Anyway, that's nothing to do with what you were saying, but that's suddenly a bit of information there. Can I just take the opportunity to thank Rick from the Netherlands for a super sticker? Thank you, matey. Always such a great supporter of the channel. Thanks, Rick. Vadim Orlov for gifting 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you, Vadim. Very super kind of you. It's now James Cowley, a member. And Aussie T also gifting a membership there too. So thank you, Aussie T. Huge thanks to Mark Bizq, who's in Canada at the moment. We'll see how fear of escalating leads to escalation. This is a really good point from Mark, that if you allow Putin to if you give him an inch, he will take a mile, right? You allow him through your anti-escalation fear, he will just push that envelope, and take advantage of that. Taurus or not, I'd hate to think where Ukraine would be without German aid. Great interview as usual. Thanks, Mark. And yeah, I mean, if you think what Germany's done this year, it's been quite incredible. I mean, it depends, I suppose, how you equate the $61 billion American aid package. But if you equate that only as $20 to $25 billion of actual aid, and the rest of it is other stuff that is kind of almost investing in the US itself or doing other things that aren't military aid, would Germany this year would they be the biggest in real terms contributor to the military aid to Ukraine?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When we exclude the US from military aid, because no country in the world, let's face it, no country in the world can actually compete with the US if they really want to. I mean, they have totally different capabilities, both in terms of their own military strength. I mean, the US can easily draw a couple of hundreds of tanks or IFVs or APCs, whatever, from their own stocks. When Germany would do the same, we're basically blank without anything left.
Yeah.
So and the US even wouldn't notice. So but without the US, Germany, of course. I mean, it is confirmed by now that our funds for this year, so about 7.1 billion, are actually fully spent or fully contracted, fully allocated, however you want to say it, right? And we are now trying, and I hope this is getting done in June or within June, that we are trying to get another 3.8 billion euros for Ukraine this year. Just
incredible.
want to highlight, yeah, that's very great. Just want to highlight this number is not officially confirmed by a government source. That was just mentioned by Bild, but it was neither declined nor confirmed if this is the actual sum. But if it is with 3.8 billion, I mean, this is more. You have to imagine, we are now trying to get more money for Ukraine, more than France has allocated originally for the whole year.
Just, yeah. And
yeah,
it's Germany. It's all about Germany. It really is.
So yeah, I think we would easily
well, and France.
Yeah, I mean, that's about over 10 billion euros in military aid for Ukraine this year.
It's incredible.
So
yeah. Thanks very much, by the way, Mark. Really, really generous, as you always are. Thank you. Stephen Bendal, who's presently in Ukraine, gifted 5 ATP Geopolitics memberships. Thank you very much, mate. Really appreciate that. Johnny Christensen with some Danish love. Thanks for your super sticker, my friend. Very good to have you here. And Julian Rossiter. Has there been any talk of Germany potentially developing nuclear weapons if the US is taken out of NATO by the Mandarin Mussolini? This is a really good point, and I've heard this being brought up a number of times, because if the EU steps away from the US in terms of security dominance and becomes more independent, and if the UK is not in the EU and the EU has to develop a integrated defense plan that might involve having their own army or some kind of defense forces, then part of that strategy will surely be nuclear armament, nuclear deterrence, and France would be the only nuclear nation in the EU. So has there been much talk about this in German media at all?
Not at all. Not at all. I don't think this will ever happen, that Germany will develop an own nuclear weapon. I believe there was some talk about it, yes, since 2022, but nothing serious, to be honest. And I don't think it will ever happen. I actually also don't think that the US will abandon Europe. I would say even under Donald Trump, if it's going to happen, I would say, of course, Donald Trump will demand more from European partners, definitely. But I don't think they will abandon Ukraine. There would be, I mean, it's the US, okay, you have to agree, it would be a stupid move, and it's the US, so might be happening. But sorry for the American viewers here. But no, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, because I've done an awful lot of talking about this, which is the pros and cons of America demanding that Europe stand up on its own 2 feet more. So the more that Europe and the EU become arms and security independent of the US, the less power and influence the US has over Europe. So if US are the overarching dominant force, then they can dictate what the EU does more. But if they say you need to spend more, which means spending more invariably will be inside the EU because of the new EU strategy for defense, means they have to spend 60% of their 60% on arms procurement has to come from inside the EU. It means that a lot of orders won't go to the US. So the more that Donald Trump says you guys need to pay more, the more that they will actually move away from needing the US, and that doesn't work in the US's favor. So that's my thought.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. As less the EU actually needs the US, of course, they have less influence, but the US will always be the dominant party within NATO, within Europe, in terms of security. In my opinion, there won't be a much change. And I mean, the US is right. Like, I hate to say it, but Donald Trump was right. Like, Europe needs to spend more on defense. And we now see this with the Russian war of aggression in Ukraine, against Ukraine. He was not wrong about that. I mean, can you imagine, like, Europe as a whole spending at least 2 or 2.5% of the GDP in terms of defense, how we were now looking in Ukraine or on Ukraine? I mean, like in Germany, we do this with our 100 billion special fund, right? And the 100 billion by the end of the year will be completely allocated. And then they say the 100 billion is not enough. We need at least another 100 billion and maybe a second. So in total, maybe 300 billion euros to actually get our own army to the military strengths they actually need to. And this goes for many, many European countries. Of course, not the Eastern European, because they were actually smart, like Poland or Lithuania, Estonia. These countries, they actually spend a lot of more on defense because, of course, they are closer to Russia and Belarus. But they're right about that. And we were wrong. We have to admit that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like, I begrudgingly will say, yeah, Trump was right on that. I won't, however, because he tries to say it's because of what I said that they spent more. No, they're spending more because of the war in Ukraine. Yeah, they're not. They didn't go, okay, Trump, we'll spend X billions more, because that's not going to cut the mustard. It's the imminent threat of Putin's Russia with the war in Ukraine, and that's what did it. But we have had it. We've got a real change landscape at the moment now. Germany, just to well, actually, the last point I want to make on NATO is that I keep getting frustrated that people think NATO is a thing that we pay for, like we're paying for something. NATO is us paying ourselves for an improved national defense. So when we have to spend 2% of GDP, and it should really be higher than that now, and many people are asking for that, that is money being spent on by ourselves on ourselves, right? So it's not paying for something out there. Like, we're not all paying. We haven't gone to a pizza restaurant and we're all chipping in for a pizza, and everyone gets a slice of that pizza. And the more you pay, the more pizza you get. You're not. You're paying yourself for your own things. And if you spend enough on yourself, so you have a strong enough army, then you don't qualify, because it's not binding. So I think people get this wrong, and I actually think Trump kind of misunderstands it as well. It's like, we're paying more for this thing than you guys are. You guys need to pay more. I think the whole way that a lot of people understand NATO is just a little bit warped. Anyway, that's my own little sidebar.
No, you're absolutely right with that one.
So I guess one of the last things to say, if anyone has any questions for German aid to Ukraine, please get them in. There is talk about conscription changes in Germany, as we are seeing in many countries in Europe, as a direct reaction, one would assume, to what is going on in Russia, or in Ukraine. So what's your take on that? What is happening? What can you tell people?
Well, a real conscription, like you're now 18, you have to serve in the military for at least 2 or 3 years, something like this, like in South Korea, for example. That's not going to happen within Germany. We can't go back, right? We don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the equipment, we have nothing which we actually need to get something like this done, and we don't have the funding for this. That's what I talked about with the 100 billion special fund, that it's just the first step to an army which is actually well fitted, which has good infrastructure, stuff like this. And we don't have the fundings for this right now. Pistorius wanted to get things similar done to, I believe it was like the Finnish model or the Swedish or the Norwegian, some of these Nordic countries. So a similar way to that. But as far as I understood, like, nothing is set in stone yet, and we have to see in the future what will happen. But the regular defense service that you have to serve in the military for a couple of years when you turn 18 as a male, that's not going to happen.
Interesting. And so many nations talking about things like that. Brian Ivey, as an American, says Europe, especially France, has shown a good level of independence over the years. This is really true, and this is part of their military industrial strategy. It's why they're the second biggest arms exporter in the world at the moment, and they are the ones driving, and have been driving over the course of this war, for things to be spent within the EU. So that funding for artillery shells, they were the ones that were holding out primarily for the funding to not go out to buy artillery outside the EU, like the Czech initiative. They wanted it all to be spent in the EU because it's part of their strategy. So that's absolutely right. So why do you overemphasize the ability of Europe to have independence in the current alliance? I'm not sure quite that question, but I am completely 50-50 on this. I don't know. If I was American, I would be I would be caught in two minds. Like, on the one hand, we want you to spend more on your defense more in Europe so that you can do more of the heavy lifting, and America doesn't have to do everything. But by America having to do everything, you then get to control things in terms of military strategy abroad. So I don't know where I sit on that. So I don't know that if I am overemphasizing particular things. Anyway, sorry, that's a question from me, from Brian. I don't know if you have any. What's your opinion on European army or European military independence?
Well, to be honest, in my opinion, we should do as much as we can to strengthen ourselves and not be dependent on other countries or dependent on the US particularly. But in my opinion, it still won't change the fact that we will ever be dependent on the US, because the US has far different capabilities as we have, and this won't change, in my opinion. Like, we can spend as much military aid as we want on our own military. This won't change that we are dependent on the US in the next years.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the real high-end equipment, like your fifth generation, fighter planes and whatnot, and stealth bombers and whatnot, they're in a different place than Europe. And in order to get there, you would have to invest gazillions of spondoolies, and that's not really going to happen. So yeah, I think you're always going to want US on your side rather than against you. That's for sure. Thanks for Brian for that. And I think we have one for you here. What is Germany doing with its stocks of cluster munitions?
There aren't any. I believe when it was November 2019, I believe the latest stocks were destroyed. And so we don't have any stocks of cluster ammunition. We have nothing in any storage. Everything is completely destroyed.
Right, there you go. And is there anything that Germany has that hasn't been given that you think could be given, or have they pretty much done everything they can?
Well, except Taurus, of course. I think this is basically the same answer as the last time, and I believe the last time I said that I actually want a strategy on how to provide Ukraine with modern main battle tanks, for example. And I mean, we see this now with the infantry fighting vehicles, right? I believe I saw news from you, like with the Dutch pledging like 400 million for CV90s or something. So this is very, very good, and this is what I also want to see from us, because we need a strategy to provide Ukraine with modern Western-made main battle tanks. We have Denmark and the Netherlands financing 14 Leopard 2 tanks for Ukraine. We have Spain now delivering 19, co-financed by Germany. But these are small numbers. These are very small numbers, and we need a consistent flow of modern, highly modern main battle tanks, and that's what I want to see.
Well, actually, that reminds me. So Germany, first of all, I forgot to say this earlier, but Germany does do an absolutely amazing job of providing huge numbers of trucks, like Zetro's trucks and the big HX whatever 81 trucks, and that must not go forgotten, because actually it's really important for logistically for Ukraine to get their stuff around. Germany seem to be the main providers of that equipment, so that's cool. But the other thing I wanted to know is that Germany are, I thought, supposed to be having inside Ukraine factories to build. Is it the Lynx and the Fuchs, the infantry fighting vehicle, and APC? Do we know how that's going? Is that far away?
Well, you're talking about Rheinmetall, right? And the So my latest info was that Rheinmetall wants to set things up by the end of the year in terms of own production. But right now we don't have any specific information on if the contract has been signed, if they are still preparing this or something like this. There's no information on this. Of course, this would be great. If I recall correctly, we had some news that Rheinmetall expected the German government to finance a couple of them for Ukraine, and the first were already in production. I asked Rheinmetall about this a couple of months ago, but they didn't want to give any confirmation if this is actually now happening or if there were deliveries taking place, if they get financing. They didn't want to say anything about this. And right now I would say it's announcements by Rheinmetall, and that's it.
Yeah, and do you know how these facilities are being constructed? Are they being made underground? I know there must be some facilities underground, but if I was Rheinmetall and wanting to invest in Ukraine, right, I'd be like, yeah, I'm cool with that as long as we build it like about 20 meters underground.
Well, I would personally, like, I don't have any detailed information. I saw once an image which was later deleted due to the specific nature of the image from Markus Faber, who is in the Defense Committee of the German Bundestag. He visited the construction site where FFG, one of the, or even the biggest provider of military vehicles to Ukraine, German company currently builds something in Ukraine for maintaining their delivered vehicles in Ukraine. And this was not underground. There was a picture posted basically in the hangar. You could see that there was like not a metal construction, but a stone construction over them, and it basically looked like a jet hangar or something like this. But I would probably say they are building this in Western Ukraine, mainly close to Kiev, because the air defense is very close structured around the capital city. And of course underground, but how do you even build a whole construction site, like a whole factory, a very big factory of building tanks fully on their own within Ukraine underground? That would be probably very, very expensive.
Yeah, and as Thierry, welcome on board, buddy. As Thierry Schmidlin says, yeah, the problem of production in Ukraine, indigenous production, is it's dependent on consistent energy production, which is what Russia are doing such a good job of. I mean, that to me is the biggest vulnerability that Ukraine are faced with at the moment is their energy infrastructure. There are. Thank you very much. So a German Matthias, I produce not dürfte. Thanks for live stream, and nice to see and hear DEAID-UA, or as I used to think it was, DEAID-UA. Greetings from Lübeck in Germany. So
from
good stuff.
Lübeck.
Oh, sorry, Lübeck. Oh, it's got an umlaut. Why is it not Lübeck?
No, it's Lübeck.
Okay.
It's a beautiful city. But no, it's very great to see you, Matthias. Hello.
And why don't we see tons of Puch G-class cars delivered to Ukraine? I don't know what these are. Do you? Germany should have tons of them and could buy them back from Switzerland and Austria.
Puch G-class cars? Actually, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I'm stupid right now, but
okay. I'm just showing. I've just Googled them. That's what it looks like. So these are those old Mercedes.
Yeah, of course. G-class I know, but Puch that's what I was confused about. About the G-class, I know that
it was sold under. It was in certain markets. It was sold under the Puch name as Puch G until 2000. So that's an old school.
That's news to me. Yeah. Okay, interesting. I know that the German government delivered certain cars, also similar SUVs, to the Ukrainian army and to other Ukrainian users. I know that I believe the Caracal we are delivering to Ukrainian special forces, is built on the chassis of this exact vehicle, if I'm not mistaken. Please correct me. And So yeah, but you're absolutely right. Like Ukraine, we always do see this, that so many SUVs, like for transporting soldiers and equipment, basically in the rear area, not on the front line, are still getting attacked and demolished by shelling, by Russian drones, stuff like this. So SUVs and well-made SUVs, especially, are much needed in Ukraine.
And by the way, that reminds me that hopefully, fingers crossed, and JR's being really big behind this, who does my mapping with me, or mainly does it himself. We may be doing a NATO truck thing in the future. Just I really want to do another fundraising campaign and really help out there. So we may be doing a NATO truck with Greg and Prof. Gurdis and other people. So just for my audience, I'll keep you posted on that. And Sabra Berzevicht, but I probably pronounced that incorrectly. Would the MQ-9 Reaper drone, the Laser Avenger, and the Mars robot weapon systems be useful in Ukraine? And do you think the US would ever give them?
That's actually a question not for me. I really have no intel on these specific drones or weapon systems, whatever. I'm very sorry.
The MQ-9 is the Reaper drone is a big classic. One of them came down, didn't they? And a couple of, if you remember earlier on in the war, flying over international areas, the Russian jets were going in front of them and spraying them with fuel to try and bring them down, which I thought was an act of war personally. But there you go. These are kind of useful, but then I guess not so useful for Ukraine because I don't know whether you would use them over places that just don't have much contested airspace. So there was a move, because I think the manufacturers of the drones said we'll let Ukraine buy them for like $1 each. And there was this thing like, why aren't we allowing that? And I think it was a way of getting them to start using them. But I don't know if they're just not the right weapon for the Ukrainians to use at the moment. What they need are just tons of really cheap explosive drones to just overwhelm the right. What we have seen, and I find this absolutely amazing, is that you can fly a crappy moped with wings. I say crappy, but you know, it takes a bit of thought. But yeah, you fly a moped with wings 600 kilometers and then fly it into an airbase, and it hits the air. Like two Su-57s were damaged. And possibly even air defense. The air defense itself was damaged there. There was talk about that happening, and nothing shot it down. So Russia is empty of air defense. It's just it blows my mind. So they just need 1 million of those and just fly them into Russia all night long. Anyway,
yeah. The only thing I would say about this, because I'm really not familiar with these. Of course, the Reaper drone, you see it in the movies all the time. But the other things, I really don't know about them. But I always imagined, like, when we are now 2.5 years into the war, more or less, and specific things are not in Ukraine yet. I mean, we have delivered so much stuff. And regarding the US, they have delivered the most modern air defense systems. They have delivered cruise missiles not cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, right? ATACMS, not a cruise missile. But they have delivered so much. And I would always think that either they are not as useful for Ukraine as other things. They need much more of other things, and funding is limited, even for the US. Or it's just not needed, or it's just too modern. I mean, I could well imagine that that the US, especially when it comes to drones which are being shot down on a regular basis, or jammed or whatever, right? When they are highly modern and there's technology in it with which the Russians shouldn't get, at least in my opinion. I'm an amateur, not a professional. But I would say that the US also, and this goes for everyone, not supplying specific things just because it's too modern for Russia to actually get this into their hands. So these 3 things. So I wouldn't worry too much about this.
So that Laser Avenger looks like the Avenger is like a Humvee with a number of manpads like Stinger on the back. I don't know if this is like a laser version of that being developed by Boeing. And again, it's like you were saying, German aid, that these seem to be very modern things that are under development. But this reminds me of the Dragonfire that the UK are producing, and another sonic weapon, I think, as well. That are really cheap if they can actually make them at scale and get them to Ukraine. So the Dragonfire was this laser that can fire at a kilometer to an accuracy of a coin, and it costs £10 to shoot. I mean, it's just insanely cheap. And they're talking about getting these on naval ships in the UK, but Ukraine is a test bed for some of this stuff. And Finland announced the other day, because Finland don't tell anyone what they give to Ukraine, but there was this claim that came out the other day that they are giving some real, not just some of their older stuff, but some of their cutting edge things that they're just trying out at the moment. Is the perfect, like, you know, which happened with the Skynex, didn't it? Which how many of them do they have at the moment?
2.
And are they going to get more?
Yeah, another 2, which are being produced and will be delivered next year to Ukraine. I think that actually goes for a lot of countries, right? Just in terms of Germany, because I can't speak for other countries. I was wondering what the Finnish guy was actually talking about, because there's not a lot going on which I would knew of. But in terms of Germany, we have delivered a lot of cutting edge things to Ukraine, like Skynex, of course, and also currently in production the RCH 155, the remote control howitzer 155, which is currently in production for Ukraine, 36 systems in total.
Which is also what the UK are buying into as well.
Yeah, it's as you said, right? Ukraine is a very big test field. There were news about Rheinmetall saying that they are delivering prototype artillery ammunition, which is able to fly around 100 kilometers into enemy control territory. So yeah, there's a lot of going on, and we don't know always what will happen.
Yeah, so back to Sabra, and by the way, thanks, Sabra. He's been a long time supporter. I really appreciate your support, mate. But yeah, I don't know about those particular units, but as Germany says, there is an awful lot happening. People are developing stuff, and there's no better test bed than an actual war scenario. So this is why, and I've talked about this an awful lot previously, that when we support Ukraine, like that whole moral argument has been and gone, and it's been won, and Ukraine are the good guys, Russia the bad guys. That's how I see it, and I think it's fairly obvious. But actually, it goes beyond that to why we are helping Ukraine. We are helping Ukraine because it's in our best strategic interest to do so, and it's in our best military interest. And every dollar that's spent on equipment from the US going to Ukraine will be investing in Ukraine for strategic reasons and geopolitical reasons. But also, when you replenish those stocks from presidential drawdown, and you're taking the US stocks and you're giving to Ukraine, you are replacing it with better stuff. So the money being spent is also often a way of stimulating your own economy and improving the quality of your own armed forces by buying in newer, better stuff, and helping to motivate developing R&D, developing stuff for Ukraine. But it's not just for Ukraine. That knowledge and that experience on the battlefield that you can bring back to the lab is improving your own situation. So hopefully the German army is benefiting out of this.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the RCH 155, in terms of Iris TSLM, for example, Boxer production, stuff like this, we are actually benefiting. And this is also what I said when I mentioned these long-term contracts for modern main battle tanks, for modern Leopard 2 models. This will also benefit us. I mean, this is the reason why big framework contracts even exist, where you have a framework contract of, let's say, 200, 300 Leopard 2A8 tanks, right? And you have different countries actually procuring modern tanks within this one framework contract. So it's the producer of these systems can actually scale better. The price of these systems is actually lower because you're not procuring for yourself, but also for others. it's a win-win for all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a final thing to say is that, as Pantalones Grandes says, may I advise not buying S300 and S400 from countries to help Ukraine. They do not function. It is quite incredible that we're seeing ATACMS that are kind of 40-year-old bits of kit destroying the best air defenses that Russia has to offer. I mean, there's an awful lot to be learned from this war, and not a lot of it makes Russia look good, I have to say. Look, Germany, thank you so much. Is there anything else you think we haven't covered that you had in your head to share?
Not that comes to my mind right now.
Awesome sauce. Well, look, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Sorry, it's a little bit later than I had said. And thank you to those in the live chat who are having a very lively chat. I don't know whether I'm working out if there is someone who's pro-Russian in the thread, and there's a little bit of a tete-a-tete going on. But thank you very much to the live chatters. Where can people find you, Germanade?
Well, on social media, on X, on Blue Sky, of course, on my website, you just shown, and also on Telegram, but not very. Yeah, it's a very small Telegram, to be honest. Mostly on X and on Blue Sky.
So if you go to DE Aid UA, or Dea Idua, as I like to say, .org. That's DE Germany Aid UA Ukraine .org. You'll find him there, and also DE Aid UA as the handle for Twitter as well. And go and check him out on Twitter. Please follow him on Twitter and check out his website, obviously. But very useful information on Twitter. You guys know that I share most of what he says with you at some point or another. And if I miss it, then we have these chats and we fill in the gaps. So thanks, mate. Really appreciate that. Last words?
Was happy to be here. Had a great time, and can't wait for the next time.
Thanks, man. And there will be a next time, because I love these. So I really appreciate that. And I hope the audience do. Anyway, guys, take care of your good selves, and I'll see you around at some point later. I haven't done my mapping for over a day now, so I must get on and do that. It will get out at some point later today, but appreciate all of your support. Take care, and speak to you guys soon.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.